One actor got cancer from nuclear fallout and watched his co-stars die one by one. Another film killed its leading man 3 weeks after shooting wrapped. Stuntmen died on camera and the studio buried the footage. Clark Gable had a heart attack 12 days after finishing his final scene and never woke up. Marlon Brando's directing debut turned into such a nightmare, he never stepped behind a camera again. These classic westerns destroy their actors' lives. Number 11. The Covered Wagon. James Cruise directed this silent western epic in 1923, and it became one of the biggest hits of the decade. Over 5 million people saw it in theaters. Paramount made a fortune, and several cast members died making it happen. The Covered Wagon tells the story of pioneers crossing the frontier in wagon trains, and Cruise was obsessed with authenticity. He wanted real wagons, real rivers, real danger. He got all three, and people paid the price. The production shot on location in Nevada and Utah with a cast and crew of over 3,000 people. Cruise used real covered wagons, hundreds of them, pulled by actual oxen across deserts and through mountain passes. He hired Native Americans to play themselves in battle scenes. And when the script called for a river crossing, he found a real river and sent wagons into the current with actors inside. That river crossing nearly killed multiple people. The Snake River was running fast and cold, and Cruise insisted on doing it practically. Several wagons overturned, actors were thrown into the water, livestock drowned, and at least one stuntman, according to reports that were never officially confirmed, was swept downstream and never recovered. Paramount denied anyone died, but crew members told different stories for years afterward. The conditions were brutal. Cast and crew lived in tents for months in the Nevada desert. Summer temperatures hit over 100 degrees. Water was scarce. Medical care was non-existent. People got sick constantly. Injuries were common, and crews kept filming because shutting down production would have cost Paramount too much money. Several actors, including supporting cast members whose names are now lost to history, suffered heat exhaustion so severe they had to be sent home. Others developed infections from minor injuries that turned serious because there was no way to treat them properly on location. The production became an endurance test, and not everyone endured. The film made over $4 million, an astronomical sum in 1923. It launched the Western epic genre and proved audiences would pay to see massive spectacle on screen. Critics raved about the realism. They had no idea what that realism cost. Cruise became one of the top directors in Hollywood. The people who died or were permanently injured making his vision possible were forgotten. Paramount never acknowledged the deaths, never compensated families, and the truth stayed buried for decades. The Covered Wagon made history, but the price was paid in blood. Number 10. How the West Was Won.
Now, my home is quite close to the river. It's very comfortable.
Sure.
Now, I want you and your niece to spend a few days visiting.
That lady, and I'll kill you.
That's enough!
Here.
Art!
Here. Take.
3 directors, John Ford, Henry Hathaway, and George Marshall, shot this massive Cinerama Western, telling the story of one family across 50 years of American expansion. The film cost $15 million, used thousands of extras, and featured some of the most dangerous stunt work ever attempted in a Hollywood production. It also killed a stuntman and permanently injured several others in accidents that were covered up or downplayed by MGM. The most infamous incident happened during the train sequence directed by Henry Hathaway. A stuntman named Bob Morgan was supposed to fall between 2 moving train cars. The stunt went wrong. Morgan got caught under the wheels and his leg was severed. The cameras kept rolling. Hathaway got the shot. Morgan survived but lost his leg and sued MGM for negligence. The studio settled out of court and buried the story. But that was not the only serious injury. During the River Rapids sequence, another stuntman nearly drowned when his raft flipped and trapped him underwater. He was pulled out unconscious and revived, but suffered brain damage from oxygen deprivation. MGM paid him off quietly and moved on. The production was too big, too expensive, and too important to shut down over injured stuntmen. The Buffalo Stampede scene put dozens of stunt performers at risk. Real buffalo, hundreds of them, were herded across open ground while stunt riders had to navigate through them on horseback. Multiple riders were thrown and trampled. Most walked away with bruises and broken bones. One rider suffered internal injuries so severe he never worked again. MGM's official record listed 0 serious injuries during the stampede. Stuntmen tell a different story. Debbie Reynolds later talked about how terrified she was during the raft sequence. She was pregnant at the time, though the studio did not know it, and she genuinely believed she was going to die when the raft hit the rapids. The stunt coordinator assured her it was safe. It was not. The raft capsized, and Reynolds had to swim for her life in freezing water while cameras captured her panic. Carol Baker, another lead actress, suffered a serious fall during the Civil War sequence and injured her back. She finished the film in constant pain and dealt with chronic back problems for the rest of her life. The studio doctors gave her painkillers and told her to keep working. How the West Was Won made over $50 million worldwide and won 3 Oscars. It is still considered one of the great Western epics, but the human cost was never fully acknowledged. MGM protected itself legally and financially, while the people who actually took the risks paid with their bodies. Number 9. They died with their boots on. Raoul Walsh directed this Errol Flynn vehicle about George Armstrong Custer, and the title turned out to be grimly prophetic. 3 stuntmen died during production, making it one of the deadliest shoots in Hollywood history. Warner Brothers covered it up, lied to investigators, and kept filming. The movie made millions. The families of the dead got almost nothing. The first death happened during a cavalry charge scene. A stuntman named Jack Budlong was thrown from his horse when the animal stumbled. He hit the ground hard, and another horse trampled him. He died at the scene. Warner Brothers called it an accident, paid his widow a small settlement, and resumed filming the next day. The second death occurred just days later. Another cavalry charge, another stuntman thrown from his horse. This time, the rider, whose name was never publicly released, broke his neck in the fall and died before an ambulance could reach the location. Warner Brothers claimed it was bad luck. Stunt coordinators said it was negligence. The horses were being pushed too hard. The riders were exhausted, and the safety protocols were non-existent. The third death happened during the Battle of Little Bighorn sequence. A stuntman fell during a mass battle scene involving hundreds of extras. He was trampled by horses and extras in full costume. By the time anyone realized what happened, he was dead. Warner Brothers shut down production for one day, held a brief investigation that found no wrongdoing, and went back to filming. Errol Flynn was reportedly devastated. He knew these men. He worked with them on previous films, and he watched the studio treat their deaths as minor inconveniences that cost shooting time and money. Flynn started drinking heavier during production, showing up late, blowing his lines. Walsh had to work around him. Olivia de Havilland, Flynn's co-star, later said the atmosphere on set became toxic after the deaths. Nobody wanted to be there. Everyone was scared, but Warner Brothers had too much money invested to stop. The film had to be finished no matter what it cost in lives. The studio also covered up numerous serious injuries that did not result in death. Broken bones, concussions, internal injuries. All of it was handled quietly with cash payments and non-disclosure agreements. The official record shows 3 deaths. Stuntmen who worked on the film claim the real number of people permanently disabled or seriously injured was over a dozen. They died with their boots on, made over $2 million at the box office, and became one of Flynn's most popular films. Modern critics praise Walsh's direction and Flynn's performance. The 3 men who died making it possible are footnotes in film history, if they are mentioned at all. Number 8. The Alamo.
185 men fighting to their deaths against a horde of 7,000 in the most savage hand-to-hand combat in history.
John Wayne directed, produced, and starred in this passion project about the siege of the Alamo, and it nearly destroyed him financially and professionally. Wayne invested his own money, mortgaged his house, and convinced investors to pour millions into building the largest outdoor set ever constructed. The budget ballooned to $12 million. The film made money, but not enough. Wayne spent years paying off debts, and the stress nearly killed him. Wayne built an entire replica of the Alamo and the surrounding town in Brackettville, Texas. The set covered 400 acres and cost over $1.5 million just for construction. He hired over 5,000 extras. He bought horses, cannons, costumes, everything needed to recreate 1836 Texas. And he refused to compromise on scale or authenticity, even when the money started running out. The shoot was a disaster. Wayne had never directed a film this big before. He clashed with cinematographer William Clothier constantly. The Texas heat was unbearable. Extras were collapsing from heat exhaustion. The schedule kept slipping, and every delay cost Wayne more money he did not have. Richard Widmark, one of the stars, hated Wayne's direction and said so publicly. Their relationship deteriorated so badly they barely spoke off camera. Widmark later called working on the Alamo one of the worst experiences of his career. He thought Wayne was in over his head and too stubborn to ask for help. The final battle sequence took weeks to film and cost over $3 million. Wayne used real explosions, real fire, and put hundreds of stunt performers in danger. Multiple people were injured, though none seriously enough to shut down production. Wayne pushed through, convinced this film would be his legacy. When the Alamo finally came out in 1960, it made $14 million domestic. That sounds profitable until you factor in the $12 million budget plus marketing costs. Wayne barely broke even, and he had personally guaranteed loans that took years to pay back. He had to take acting jobs he did not want just to cover the debt. The film got 7 Oscar nominations, but only won 1 for Best Sound. Critics were mixed. Some praised the spectacle, others called it bloated and self-indulgent. Wayne was devastated. He had poured everything into this film, convinced it would cement his place in Hollywood history. Instead, it nearly bankrupted him and damaged his reputation as a producer. Wayne never directed another film on this scale. He directed one more movie, The Green Berets, and that was it. The Alamo broke something in him. The stress, the debt, the critical backlash, all of it took a toll. He survived, but he never attempted anything this ambitious again. Number 7. Giant
Calf's head. So we take and wrap it in clean white cloth and then wrap it tight in canvas and put it down in a pit of hot mesquite coal.
George Stevens directed this sprawling Texas epic starring Rock Hudson, Elizabeth Taylor, and James Dean in his final role. Dean finished filming in September 1955, got in his Porsche Spyder, and drove to a car race in Salinas, so he never made it. Dean crashed it head-on into another vehicle and died instantly at age 24. The film was still in post-production. Stevens had to finish editing, knowing his lead actor was dead. Dean's death devastated the production. Stevens had worked closely with him for months. Elizabeth Taylor was in shock. Rock Hudson, who had clashed with Dean during filming, was racked with guilt over their arguments. Warner Brothers had to figure out how to market a film starring a dead actor who was about to become a cultural icon. Dean's performance in Giant is haunting because you know he is already gone. He plays Jet Rink, a ranch hand who strikes oil and becomes a bitter, alcoholic millionaire. The character ages 40 years over the course of the film, and watching Dean play an old drunk knowing he died young gives the whole thing an eerie quality Stevens could never have planned. The final scene Dean filmed shows Jet Rink drunk and alone in a ballroom, giving a slurred speech to an empty room. It is one of the most tragic performances ever captured on film, and Dean shot it just weeks before he died. Stevens kept the scene exactly as Dean performed it, making no changes in editing. The production itself was brutal even before Dean's death. They shot in Marfa, Texas in summer heat that regularly topped 110 degrees. The cast and crew lived in a small town with limited accommodations. Tempers flared constantly. Dean method acted his way through the role, refusing to break character and alienating the rest of the cast. Rock Hudson thought Dean was a pretentious punk who took himself too seriously. Dean thought Hudson was a hack who relied on good looks instead of talent. Stevens had to mediate between them constantly. Elizabeth Taylor tried to keep the peace and ended up exhausted from playing therapist to two grown men who could not stand each other. After Dean's death, Warner Brothers exploited it shamelessly. They marketed Giant as James Dean's final performance. They used his death to generate publicity, and it worked. The film made over $35 million and became one of the biggest hits of 1956. Dean got a posthumous Oscar nomination for Best Actor. He lost to Yul Brynner. Stevens later said, editing Giant after Dean died was the hardest thing he ever did in his career. Every frame reminded him that this brilliant, difficult, maddening young actor was gone, and all that remained was the performance frozen on film. Number 6. The Big Trail.
I'll go get one.
All right. What I was aiming to tell you was this. When I came in...
Raoul Walsh directed this early widescreen Western, starring a young unknown actor named John Wayne in his first leading role. The film was a technological marvel shot in an experimental 70mm format called Grandeur that required special cameras and special theaters. It was also a massive bomb that nearly ended Wayne's career before it started and sent him into poverty for nearly a decade. Fox Studios bet huge on The Big Trail. They spent $2 million, an enormous sum in 1930, building the biggest Western ever attempted. They shot on location across multiple states. They hired thousands of extras. They used real wagon trains, real livestock, real everything. And they cast an untested 23-year-old kid named Marion Morrison, gave him the stage name John Wayne, and made him the lead. And Wayne was not ready. He had no training, no experience carrying a film, and no idea how to handle the pressure. Walsh tried to coach him, but Wayne was stiff and awkward on camera. His line delivery was wooden. His movements were unnatural. The film needed a star, and Wayne was not one yet. The grandeur format was the bigger problem. Most theaters could not show it. The special projectors were expensive and rare, so Fox had to shoot the entire film twice. Once in 70mm and once in standard 35mm. That doubled the shooting time and doubled the cost. The production dragged on for months. The budget kept climbing, and Fox started panicking. When The Big Trail finally came out, it flopped hard, made less than $1 million domestic. The grandeur format was a failed experiment. Audiences did not care about widescreen when they were too busy dealing with the Depression, and critics savaged Wayne's performance, calling him amateurish and unconvincing. Fox dropped Wayne immediately. He went from leading man to B-Western purgatory overnight. For the next 9 years, Wayne ground out cheap westerns for Poverty Row studios like Monogram and Republic. He made dozens of forgettable films for almost no money, living hand to mouth while watching other actors become stars. The failure of The Big Trail haunted Wayne for the rest of his life. He later said those 9 years in B-Westerns were the hardest of his career. He was broke, humiliated, and convinced he would never get another shot at stardom. He blamed himself for not being good enough, for failing when Fox gave him the opportunity. It was not until Stagecoach in 1939 that Wayne finally got his redemption. John Ford cast him as the Ringo Kid, and this time, Wayne was ready. But those 9 years between The Big Trail and Stagecoach nearly destroyed him, financially and emotionally. The film that was supposed to make him a star almost ended his career before it began. Number 5. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Sam Peckinpah's Western, about the manhunt for Billy the Kid, was supposed to be his comeback after years of studio battles and drinking. Instead, it became the film that broke him completely. MGM took the movie away from him, recut it into incomprehensible garbage, and released a version that made no sense. Critics destroyed it. Peckinpah's career never recovered. He spent the rest of his life drinking himself to death, convinced Hollywood had murdered his best work. Peckinpah arrived in Durango, Mexico in 1972, already in bad shape. He was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day, popping pills, and barely sleeping. The script, written by Rudy Wurlitzer, was dark and elegiac, exactly the kind of revisionist Western Peckinpah loved. James Coburn and Chris Christopherson signed on, and shooting began with Peckinpah convinced this would be his masterpiece. It turned into a nightmare. Peckinpah clashed with producer Gordon Carroll constantly. The studio hated the slow pace and kept demanding more action. Peckinpah refused and kept shooting long, meditative scenes of men waiting to kill each other. The production fell behind schedule, the budget climbed, and Peckinpah's drinking got worse. He started showing up late to set, sometimes too drunk to work. The cast covered for him. Bob Dylan, who was composing the score and had a small acting role, watched Peckinpah unravel in real time. Dylan later said the set felt like a death watch, everyone waiting to see how bad things would get before the studio pulled the plug. MGM finally had enough. They took the film away from Peckinpah while he was still editing and brought in their own editors. They cut 22 minutes, removed entire subplots, and rearranged scenes until the story barely made sense. Peckinpah's cut ran over 2 hours and built slowly to a tragic, inevitable conclusion. MGM's cut ran 96 minutes and felt like random scenes stuck together. The theatrical version bombed, made less than $3 million. Critics called it incoherent. Peckinpah was devastated. He knew he had made something great, and he watched the studios butcher it. He started drinking even harder. His behavior became more erratic. Studios stopped hiring him. Chris Christopherson later said, "Watching what happened to Peckinpah during Pat Garrett destroyed any illusions he had about Hollywood. The studio did not care about art or vision. They cared about money and control, and when a director would not give them what they wanted, they destroyed him." Peckinpah made a few more films after Pat Garrett, but he was never the same. The fire was gone. He was just going through the motions, collecting paychecks, waiting to die. In 2005, Warner Brothers finally released the director's cut at 122 minutes. Critics called it a masterpiece. Peckinpah had been dead for 21 years and never got to see his vision vindicated. Number 4. One-Eyed Jacks.
We'll kill him.
Welcome to the party, and we hope you...
It ain't, huh? I wouldn't want to lose me a handful of brains trying to find out now, would you, Harv?
Marlon Brando's only film as a director turned into such an expensive, chaotic disaster that Paramount took it away from him and he never directed again. The production went 6 months over schedule, millions over budget, and nearly drove everyone involved insane. Brando shot over 1 million feet of film, refused to cut anything, and turned a simple revenge western into a 5-hour self-indulgent mess that the studio had to salvage. Stanley Kubrick was originally supposed to direct with Brando starring. They worked on the script together for months. Then Kubrick walked away 2 weeks before shooting, saying he and Brando had irreconcilable creative differences. Paramount panicked. They had already spent a fortune on pre-production. Brando volunteered to direct it himself, and the studio, desperate to salvage their investment, agreed. Big mistake. Brando had never directed anything. He had no idea how to run a set, stick to a schedule, or manage a budget. He showed up hours late every day. He demanded take after take for the simplest shots. He would reshoot entire sequences because he decided the light was not perfect. The crew was ready to mutiny. Carl Malden, who played the villain, later said working with Brando, the director was torture. Brando would give him contradictory direction, make him do 50 takes of a single line, then use the first take anyway. Malden never worked with Brando again after One-Eyed Jacks. Their friendship never recovered. The production shot in Monterey, California for 6 months. Brando kept expanding scenes, adding new characters, improvising dialogue. He was convinced he was making a masterpiece. Paramount was convinced he was making them bankrupt. The budget climbed from $1.8 million to over $6 million, a catastrophic overrun for 1959. When Brando finally delivered his cut, it ran 5 hours. Paramount took one look and fired him from the editing room. They brought in their own editors and hacked it down to 2 hours and 21 minutes. Brando screamed, threatened lawsuits, and ultimately had no power to stop them. The theatrical cut is a mess. Beautiful to look at. Brando made sure of that, but narratively incoherent. Entire subplots disappear without resolution. Characters vanish midway through. The pacing lurches between glacial and rushed. Critics were baffled. audiences stayed away. One-Eyed Jacks lost money and became a legendary example of what happens when you give an actor with no experience total creative control. Brando was humiliated. He later called directing the worst experience of his life and said he would never do it again. He kept that promise. Decades later, film scholars have tried to rehabilitate One-Eyed Jacks, pointing to its gorgeous cinematography and Brando's complex performance. But even the biggest defenders admit it is a fascinating mess. Brando had vision, but no discipline, and Paramount was not interested in bankrolling his film school education. The experience soured him on Hollywood completely and contributed to his increasingly erratic behavior for the rest of his career. Number 3. Heaven's Gate.
Now, buy that, man. See that? Buy that. Can't do a damn thing. Look at this, miss. I got
Michael Cimino followed up his Best Picture winner, The Deer Hunter, with the most catastrophic box office bomb in history. Heaven's Gate destroyed careers, bankrupted United Artists, and became synonymous with directorial excess and studio failure. The film cost over $40 million, 5 times its original budget. It made less than $4 million domestic. Cimino never recovered. Neither did anyone else involved. United Artists gave Cimino complete creative control after The Deer Hunter won 5 Oscars. No budget oversight, no studio interference, total freedom. Cimino abused that freedom spectacularly. He demanded authenticity, so he imported 100-year-old trees from Montana to recreate a specific forest. He built an entire frontier town from scratch, then tore it down because it was not period accurate enough. He shot over 220 hours of footage for a movie that would run 3 hours and 39 minutes in its longest cut. The production was hell. Cimino demanded up to 50 takes for simple shots. He forced extras to stand in freezing Montana weather for hours. He verbally abused his cinematographer, Vilmos Zsigmond, so badly that Zsigmond later said it was the worst experience of his career. Crew members quit. Others were fired for questioning Cimino's decisions. Chris Christopherson and Christopher Walken, the leads, watched the production spiral out of control with no power to stop it. Isabel Huppert, the female lead, barely spoke English and had no idea what was happening most of the time. Jeff Bridges had a supporting role and later called the whole thing a slow-motion disaster he was powerless to prevent. When Heaven's Gate premiered in November 1980, critics annihilated it. Vincent Canby at the New York Times called it an unqualified disaster. Roger Ebert said it was the worst film of the year. United Artists pulled it from theaters after 1 week, an almost unprecedented move. They tried re-editing it and releasing a shorter version months later. That bombed too. The financial fallout was catastrophic. United Artists lost over $40 million, more than any studio had ever lost on a single film. The company was sold to MGM within a year. Executives were fired. The entire New Hollywood movement, where directors had final cut and creative freedom, ended overnight. Studios took back control and never gave it up again. Cimino's career was obliterated. He made a few more films, but nobody trusted him with big budgets again. He died in 2016, still trying to explain what went wrong with Heaven's Gate, still insisting it was a masterpiece that audiences and critics were too stupid to understand. Decades later, the film has been partially rehabilitated. The restored director's cut gets screened at film festivals. Some critics now call it a flawed masterpiece, but the damage was permanent. Heaven's Gate did not just destroy careers, it changed how Hollywood worked forever. Number 2. The Misfits' Arthur Miller.
You a mechanic too?
Him? He's a cowboy.
How'd you know?
I can smell, can I?
Hey, you can't smell cows on me.
I can smell a look.
You mean he'd lie?
It might not. And then again, it just might.
Wrote this script specifically for his wife Marilyn Monroe, hoping it would be her dramatic breakthrough and save their failing marriage. Instead, it became her final completed film and contributed to Clark Gable's death. Gable suffered a heart attack 12 days after filming Wrapped and died 10 days later. Monroe spiraled into drug addiction and depression. The shoot was so toxic that almost everyone involved left damaged. John Huston directed the Misfits in the Nevada desert during summer of 1960. Temperatures hit 110 degrees. The cast was miserable. Monroe was already addicted to pills and showing up hours late or not at all. Her marriage to Miller was disintegrating. Gable was 60 years old, overweight, and doing his own stunts to prove he was still tough. Miller and Monroe fought constantly. He rewrote scenes daily, trying to fix their relationship through the script. It did not work. Monroe knew he was using her pain for his art, and she hated him for it. By the time filming ended, their marriage was over. They divorced weeks after wrapping. Gable insisted on doing a stunt where he was dragged behind a truck at high speed. Huston told him to use a double. Gable refused, saying John Wayne would never use a stunt double, and neither would he. The stunt went on for hours in brutal heat. Gable was exhausted and dehydrated. 12 days later, he had a massive heart attack. His wife blamed the stress and physical demands of the Misfits. She was probably right. Montgomery Clift was also struggling. He was recovering from a car accident that had destroyed his face and left him addicted to painkillers. He could barely remember his lines. Huston had to shoot around him constantly. Clift and Monroe bonded over their shared addiction and misery, enabling each other while the production fell apart. Eli Wallach watched the whole thing implode and later said it was the saddest set he ever worked on. Everyone was broken. Monroe was dying slowly. Gable was killing himself trying to stay relevant. Miller was watching his marriage collapse. Clift was barely functional. And Huston just kept filming, using their real pain to fuel the performances. When the Misfits came out in February 1961, Gable was already dead. Monroe would be gone within 18 months. The film made modest money, but was considered a failure. Critics found it depressing and aimless. Audiences did not want to watch Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable play damaged, broken people. They wanted stars, not suffering. The film has been reappraised over the years. Monroe's performance is now considered one of her best, but it is impossible to watch without knowing what happened to everyone involved. The Misfits killed Gable, helped destroy Monroe, and left everyone else traumatized. Arthur Miller got his script made, and it cost him everything. Number 1. The Conqueror.
Nations. In his arms, the unconquered woman. He took what he wanted when he wanted it. Bortai meets his fire with ice.
Dick Powell directed this John Wayne Genghis Khan disaster in 1954, filming on location in Utah, just downwind from a nuclear testing site. The cast and crew were exposed to radioactive fallout for months. 91 of the 220 people who worked on The Conqueror developed cancer. 46 of them died from it, including John Wayne, Susan Hayward, Agnes Moorehead, and Powell himself. The film did not just destroy careers, it killed people. Howard Hughes produced The Conqueror and picked the location in Snow Canyon, Utah, because the landscape looked like the Mongolian steppes. What he did not know, or did not care about, was that Snow Canyon was 137 miles downwind from the Nevada test site, where the government had detonated 11 nuclear bombs the previous year. Radioactive dust covered everything. The production spent 13 weeks in Snow Canyon. Cast and crew breathed contaminated air, touched contaminated sand, ate food prepared in contaminated water. Nobody warned them. The government knew the area was hot, but they did not stop the production. Hughes did not test for radiation. Everyone assumed if it was dangerous, somebody would have said something. Wayne played Genghis Khan in the yellow face makeup, which is offensive enough, but the real crime was what happened after filming. Wayne, Hayward, Moorehead, and dozens of others started getting cancer. Not immediately, but over the next 20 years, the numbers became statistically impossible to ignore. Nearly half the cast and crew developed some form of cancer. Pedro Armendariz, one of the supporting actors, was diagnosed with kidney cancer in 1963. The cancer spread rapidly, in unbearable pain, and facing a terminal diagnosis. Armendariz shot himself in 1963, rather than suffer through the final stages. He was 51 years old. Agnes Moorehead died of uterine cancer in 1974. Susan Hayward died of brain cancer in 1975. Dick Powell died of lung cancer in 1963. Less than 9 years after directing The Conqueror, John Wayne was diagnosed with lung cancer in 1964, beat it, then developed stomach cancer that killed him in 1979. The scientific community debated the connection for years. Some argued the cancer rate among the cast and crew was just statistical coincidence. Others pointed out that 46 cancer deaths out of 220 people is 3 times the expected rate. The government never officially acknowledged any connection. Howard Hughes, paranoid and reclusive, bought every existing print of The Conqueror and locked them away, reportedly watching the film obsessively in his final years. Wayne himself believed the location killed him. Before he died, he said he thought the cancer came from the Conqueror's chute. He remembered the dust, the heat, how everyone was covered in fine sand that seemed to get into everything. He just did not know that sand was radioactive. The Conqueror is a terrible film. Wayne playing Genghis Khan is absurd. The script is awful. The performances are wooden. But none of that matters compared to the body count. This was not just a bad movie. It was a death sentence for dozens of people who trusted their studio and their government to keep them safe. Hollywood has always demanded sacrifice from actors, but these westerns took more than careers. They took lives, health, and futures. Studios covered up deaths, ignored safety, and prioritized profit over people. The films became classics. The people who made them paid prices that should never have been asked.